Thank you everyone for joining me in art today. And we are going to tackle probably one of the subject matters that scare people the most, and that is the human body. So I'm going to show you some techniques today, how to determine proportions, how to construct the figure, and how to shape it to create volume that shares with the world that the body is soft and flexible and has curves and moves, and you will get hopefully the basic information on how to construct a body, and then you can start practicing and start drawing the body. So the first thing I'm going to do today is I'm going to ask you, and again, we're just working with a pencil, any pencil that you have, and you can have yourself an eraser. Also, we're not really going to use any blendy tools today, the shadow effects, but because we've done that before, if you do a body today and you like the outline of it, you can start adding clothes to it, and you can do some shading of your own. But for the purposes today, all we'll really need is this. But there's one thing that we do need, and that is a measuring tool. So if anybody has one of these handy, or would like to go grab one, if you're close to getting yourself a ruler, that will help. So I'll give you a minute if you need to go get yourself a ruler. If not, don't worry, I will show you how you can do this without a ruler, but it does make it a little bit easier. Okay. Got all this paper here. Hopefully you guys have a couple pieces. Okay, so I'm going to start with my paper portrait. Okay, this is landscape and this is portrait. So we're going to use this whole piece of paper right here. And like we did with the face, we are going to make a template here that is going to help us figure out how to draw a body. And so I'm going to put everything on this side of the paper so that I can come over here and label it. Okay, so I'm going to do and this right here is your very basic structure of a body proportionate to how they are in the world. And if you do not have a ruler, I'm going to share with you how to do this without one. Okay, so look at that. I can use a tool. This is my little, what is it? My brain just went blank on me. A sharpener. I have a sharpener here, and it's a square. If you look at it, it's a square. I can use that as a measuring tool. I also have this really nice, beautiful eraser, and I can use that as a tool. Or I don't even have that. What I could do is I could come over here. Let's say I have two different pencils here. I could just give my pencil a mark. And then I could use this area right here as my tool to come down the page and give myself some marks. So I'm going to just use this pencil here and give myself some marks. I'm going to start here at the top of the paper, and I'm just going to give myself a line. And then I'm going to come and do that. And I'm going to move it down, do that. Notice these lines, I'm just sketching nice and lightly. As with everything that we do, whenever we put pencil to paper, we make sure that we draw very lightly. I can't stress that enough. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines. Okay, so let's see how many spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and I'm going to go. Yep, I'm just gonna, let's see. I'm gonna go one more. So obviously, if you had a ruler, maybe you would just make them 1 inch, okay? And these are a little bit bigger than 1 inch. Hopefully you didn't make them this big because you can't fit 8 sections. What you want in your body, everybody's body is proportionate to about 8 head heights. So the head is going to fill that entire first section. And then from there, we're going to measure the rest of the body. Don't worry, I will show you what a kid looks like in a little bit. And also, I just wanted to emphasize that the male body, the female body, they are both still 8 heads high, but typically the head of the man is a little bigger. And so when you're doing proportion drawings of a figure, the head of the man will be bigger, so each of these sections will be bigger, and maybe the woman's frame is a little smaller, and so the head size would be a little bit smaller, and so each of these segments would be smaller. I hope that makes sense to you. But it really is just how big the head is, and then you continue down and you make a person 8 heads high. I've seen this happen where somebody is in a figure drawing class, or they just are doing a paper and they're doing a figure, and they start off and the proportions are great, and they have the necks and the shoulders and the torso, and then the legs get down here to the bottom, and then there's just not enough room because they have not given themselves enough space to put that figure 8 heads high. Okay, so we're just going to do, and also I want you to remember that of course every body type is completely different. So what I'm going to share with you today is a standard. It's a very neutral with basic proportions to it. Some people have wider hips, some people have wider shoulders, some people have shorter legs and a longer torso, and that is still proportional. They'll still be 8 heads high, but their torso might be a little bit longer. And so when you start getting this down and comfortable with this measurement process and the proportions, then you can look at an object, you can look at a picture of a figure, and you can, based on what you know about how the proportions work, you can tweak those things to make it look exactly like you need it to. So let's get started. So hopefully everybody has taken some time while I've been chatting here and given yourself 9 marks so that you have 8 spaces. Now I am going to go a little bit dark on this, and I might even just for my purposes, you don't have to do this. So if you're still working on drawing your little segments, I'm just going to come in here and just extend my line over just a little bit. And this is so that I can teach you a little bit better, but you don't need this necessarily, okay? Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the head. Now we worked with the head last week, and so we're just going to kind of get the basic shape down, right? A little bit more ovally at the top. And I also like to put a reference, right, so that it's symmetrical, right? You can have a line that comes down here too, right? Just so that you can get the symmetry right. Okay. So from that head, you'll measure it 3 times. 1, 2, 3, so that this is right here, the middle, and that will be where your pelvis is. So I just am going to just put a little bit of a dot right there. Okay. So right here in the middle of this line is where our shoulders start. So and we're going to be doing this exactly like we've done everything else, meaning we draw lightly and we look for basic shapes. Basic shapes are key in this body. So I really wanted you to, so what we're going to do is we're going to take our shoulders here and we're going to do a trapezoid shape is basically what we're going to do. Okay. And maybe it's a little bit a long trapezoid shape. And I'm just sketching that in there. And I can take the top of this trapezoid shape and I can angle the top of that. Okay. And then this right here is your chest line. Okay, and we'll label these in just a minute, but let's get our basic shapes down first. So we have our head and we've given ourselves some space for a neck. Remember, if it's a man, we're coming from the ear. If it's from the woman, we're coming right down from her eyeballs. And this right here is probably, I'm just probably going to do like a female figure here. If you wanted to do a more male figure, they are a little bit more boxy, aren't they? And so a male figure would kind of come down here a little bit. This is still their waist, but they would be a little bit boxy. And maybe what we'll do is we'll do one on the side here. But for all intents and purposes today, we're going to, at least this time, we're just going to work on this form right here. So I have my trapezoid shape, and now I'm going to do another trapezoid shape, and I'm going to invert it so that it's going to come down here. And I like to give myself some circles kind of right where the arms are going to come, just to give myself some shape to that. And then we're going to work on our legs, and the legs will come down, and I just kind of give them this boxy look, right? Like a trunk kind of a. And again, I'm going to just kind of give me a circle there. And then again, I'm going to come down one more. And there's going to be the soles of my feet. You can draw in some ankles if you want. I'm going to put some triangles down here at the bottom. Can everybody see those? Okay. And we're just giving ourselves this proportions, right? That's what we're doing here. Now let's talk about the arms. Okay, right here is our belly button. And our elbows actually come to our belly button. So I'm just going to come off the side here and just give myself an elbow. And I'm going to do an arm shape. And then,
hey, Jamie.
Yes.
Sorry, we have a request to just slow down just a little bit, please.
I can do that. I can totally do that. Because we're going to label this in just a minute too. So. Okay, and what I'm going to do next is just the arm length into your hands, and then I'm going to let you, all of you that need to, work on this, okay? So the arms, actually, the hand comes to the middle of the thigh here, okay? So your hand would come to about right here. Okay, so I'm going to just leave that there for a minute, and I'm going to let you work on that. And then in just a minute, we're going to label this. Okay, we're going to label this so that now the things that you're drawing now, and if you haven't finished drawing, still come back and label this, because then I'll give you time in between that you can label it. So right here, of course, is the top of our head. And then right here is the chin. And I'm not going to, and then remember that our head is kind of in half, right? So our eyes are going to become something somewhere down in here. So then halfway between is we have our shoulder. Then we have our chest. And then this is our belly button. And also our elbow. And then I'm going to label this one your pelvic. And it really is where your legs meet your torso. And also these of your wrists. And then right down here, we're going to do, so 2 sections, right? This is going to be the bottom of your knee. So that would be where, you know, the indication where it would bend. And then right here, this line is actually like your calf muscle. And on some people, it's very pronounced. But right here on this line, halfway down, would be your calf. And then, of course, this is the sole of your foot. How are we looking on that? How's everybody feeling? So now what I'm going to do, and hopefully you will join me, is I'm going to share with you, I'm going to just come in with my kneaded eraser, and I'm just going to go lightly over what I've done here. Oh, but I'm erasing it. I am. I'm giving myself, this right here was my template. So over the top of it, I'm going to start adding my volume because I've already constructed it. Now I'm going to add some volume. And I want you to remember that the body has no sharp angles. The body has no straight lines. So every single line that I'm going to come back in here and do over the top of my template is going to have a curve to it. It's going to be rounded. It's going to be soft That's what's going to give our body the volume it needs. So we could, of course, put a skirt over this, and that's going to have a harsh line if we wanted to do that. But when you're just drawing the body, every line that you do is going to be curved. So now I'm going to come in, and this is when I want you to darken it. Just to show yourself, find that line and give yourself it's just going to come in here, and I'm going to practice my you see how I'm following those lines. I'm going to give it my collarbones. Just going to give it a little space there. This will come in handy when you do pants or Levi's or shorts, right? And then straight from those hips, maybe they're a little bit more rounded. Just going to come, make sure that I round everything else off. Even the bottom of that foot, right? I'm going to give it a to the ankle, sweep up a little bit, and come down. Notice how I'm just kind of sketching this. Now I might be going a little bit fast for you, but I'm going to give you a chance in just a minute to really just outline this. You can just keep on going. And maybe some of these lines you don't like, so you can always go back, right? And maybe I think her shoulders are a little bit too wide. Can I go fix that? Yes, I can. Okay, and if you need to go back and darken some of these lines in later and practice that, that's just fine. But I do want, before I move on, to make sure that everybody has it labeled. Make sure that you have your top of your head, chin, shoulders, your chest, the belly button, your elbows, pelvic and your wrists, the bottom of the knee, your calf muscle, and the bottom of your foot. So if you have all this labeled and you just still have your template, you haven't really darkened it in yet, don't worry, you can go back and do that, okay? But we're gonna move on. So I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna take it and put it away. And I'm gonna get another piece of paper. If you would like, just take this piece of paper and flip it over. Actually, I might just do that, because this is going to be my reference sheet, okay? Because I'm going to teach you another way to do exactly what I just did that is a little quicker. And you're thinking, wait, she just went fast on that already. But this is a little quicker in that, of course, I'm not labeling things and I'm just using my fingers to measure it. Because as you start doing body after body and practicing body after body, you are not going to want to keep doing those 8 lines. You are not going to want to. So I'm going to teach you another way to do this, but you already know the basic principle, okay? And we're going to do an adult here, and we're going to do a kid here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just do a head shape. Okay, now make sure that your head shape is approximately the size of the one that we did before, because we now know that those 8 heads can fit on this sheet of paper. So don't be giving me a big head up here, because if you do, you're not going to be able to draw the rest. Okay, so just give me a head shape. And now what you're going to do, and don't worry, this head shape doesn't have to be perfect. Remember, we're sketching this. I think sometimes we go slow because we think we have to be perfect and meticulous. And as meticulous and perfect as I want to be in my drawing, I'm not there yet, in that I'm just giving it a sketch. Okay, so I want you to take this little sketch of your head, and I'm just going to have you take your fingers and you're going to just measure it, and we're going to count 3. 1, 2, 3. That's it. And I'm going to get a little line right there. Okay. And then I'm going to come in after I've measured my 3. 1, 2, 3. This is now half the body, and half the body right here is the pelvis. Okay, so this is where I can come and make this shape. And then remember, halfway between this mark and this mark is the chest. So our shoulders go about right here. And maybe we'll make this a little bit more boxy to show like a man figure. Or not maybe so curved. Now we're going to take that size. This is half, right? And we're going to make sure it fits. Almost doesn't. Look how big I made my head, right? This is the trick. This is the part where you've got to be like, oh, I made it too big almost, right? So I'm going to take that, and I'm almost off, and you can see I'm off the paper, right? Because my head maybe is down a little bit here, but that doesn't matter. We can't shorten him up just because he's off the paper. So we're going to make sure that we have our measurements. So I'm just going to come back here with the head, and I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. I'm glad I made that mistake so that you can see that it's very easy to do. It's very easy to miscalculate, and that is why I always start with the head and I measure it down. Okay. And then, so these are going to be our knees right here. And then it's going to come, and he's going to be off the paper. Okay. I'm still doing shoulders, I'm still doing elbows, and I'm still doing fingertips. So the wrist goes right here where our pelvic is, remember? So that's just an easier way. We did the exact same thing, but without all those lines, because I just used my finger, which I think is easier. But I really believe you have to have this so that you can get really good at this. Okay, and that's why I didn't want to start you on this way. So again, I'm just going to make sure 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, about 8 heads high. Okay, and remember, half of that is usually where their pelvis is. Their legs meet their torso. So now let's do, and I'll give you a second just to kind of, and notice I really didn't put in some arms and some hands, but you can. And you might think, oh my gosh, those arms look so long. They can't be there, right? But if you think about it, when you put your hands in your pockets, they're still jutting out to the side because you have all this space, right? Your hand will go in a pocket that's somewhere around here, right? Somewhere in here is a pocket. So here's your waist. You're putting your hand, and your arms will jut out because they are long. I want you to measure that. Also, a really fun fact is the length of your arms stretched out to here. Like if I were to stretch his arms from here to here, they would be the length of his body. So your arms, spread eagle, is how tall you are. Again, it's just an amazing thing when you know some of these measurements and how it helps you to create. And your brain might say, oh, but those arms look so long, but they are not. And I'm going to give you some practices that you can do to look for things like this and practice this. Okay, so let's move over to a child then, okay? Now here's a child over here, and we'll just do another head. And of course the head for this child is going to be a little smaller. Hopefully I made it small enough. But instead of doing 1, 2, 3 on a child, and I'm just going to write that, right? So I don't forget, 3 heads high, right, for an adult. And if it's going to be female adult, maybe the head's a little smaller. But the torso is going to be 3 heads high. On a child, it will only be 2 heads high. So I'm going to come in here and measure, and I'm going to go 1, 2. and that's where their pelvic is. And they're still gonna, you notice this is like a half of that space. For a child, it's gonna be a little closer to the head, but you're still gonna do the same form. 2 trapezoids on top of each other. And then if you measure this, you're going to take that measurement and you're just going to go whoop. So this is the same as the lower half of their body. And fortunately, this little guy fits onto my page. And then half of that, so the half of part of here is where the knees go. So I'm gonna and you can give yourself some of these lines if you want to, okay? And their elbow is going to be right here as well. And their tips of their fingers are going to come right down to their thigh, just like this one. Just that middle of that thigh. I'm going to write down here, 2 heads high. Okay. I want you to remember this is very general basics, okay? As we did with the head, everybody has a proportion to their nose and eyes and ears and mouths. But when you start looking at the faces and when you start observing the body types, you can take these templates and create the volume you need to have the hips wider or the shoulders narrower, the legs a little longer. And I still do that with a pencil when I'm looking at something, and we'll do that in just a minute. Okay, so everybody hopefully has in front of them a general proportion construction of a body with the tips that it's nice and rounded and flexible. And we started with basic shapes. Okay. And then maybe on the back side, or if you just put it on another piece of paper, another way to measure it out so that the pelvic right here where the legs meet the body, torso, is half and half, half and half. Okay. So hopefully everybody has this. Now, I'm going to put that off to the side. Keep it as a reference. Like this is going to be your body reference, just like our head reference. And go back to it as a template all the time. Because I think that that helps remind our brains not to be in control and that things need to be measured so that when we don't, so that when we look at something and we've started to draw it, we don't step back and say, oh, it just doesn't look right. But if we were to measure it in the first place, you'll find that it truly is a right measurement. So now we're going to take, oh, and I did want to show you this. Okay, I actually I thought this was a very interesting sheet. You can pull this off the internet, and it just gives you the very basics. They're saying 7.5, but all of us artists know it's 8, and this is just a very general proportion. But you'll see that the infant is only 4 heads high, right? So that's where you could do a baby, right, is 4 heads high. And I'm not going to dwell on that one. But what I'd like to do now is I would like us to remember that the body doesn't just stand still, right? In fact, we don't stand still for very long before something hurts, or we just have to sit down. But the body is in constant motion. So how do I take those basic shapes that we just talked about and move them so that our bodies that we draw can move as well? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my picture here, my paper here, and I'm going to give myself some room to show you what happens when we take those trapezoid shapes and we move them around as a 3D image would move around, okay? So this is kind of what it's going to look like. Let's just start here, and I'm not gonna really do, I can do a head if I want. Yeah, let's just do a head. I always like to start with a head, and then notice I'm just making them nice and small, right? But, and I'm coming down here, and now I'm going to do this trapezoid shape, and it's not, ooh. Okay, the recording stopped. I don't know why. We'll just keep going.
It's still showing that it's recording. I'm not quite sure what happened. I'm still showing that it's recording, so we'll keep going.
Okay, we'll just keep going. Okay. I have taken the shoulders and I have drawn the shoulder line, okay? Which means that this person maybe is looking this way. And this is the part that you're gonna see, but their torso is moved this way. And I can come down, and this is where those symmetry lines really, really work. Okay, I can make those symmetry lines push that shoulder back, the shoulder here, and now this body is moving. Okay, so now what do I do with its lower body? Well, in order to balance that out, you notice that I took the half right here, their belly button. Well, what's that other half do, right? Then it goes that way. So I still have that trapezoid shape, but now it's moved. And this is what I want you to start playing with. And then if our hips are up like this, I mean, our bellies are like this and our hips are here, we have to give ourselves some stability so that we're not gonna fall over. And our legs would come down that way. So I'm gonna let you kind of work that out for just a minute. Working on your basic shapes. This trapezoid moves and it becomes a 3D, but I'm still doing exactly what I did before, which is I give myself some shoulders. I give myself an upper body. I still have a waist. I still have a pelvic right here, right? And I've just given myself these shapes. So where's your elbow gonna be, right? And we're not gonna worry about that right now, but I just want you to see how this line can move and how to put. So let's do another one. Let's do, how do you guys feel about that one? Okay, we're just working on just the torso right now. We can do the legs later. Like you could have fun and Like here's a leg over here and this leg's down, right? Knowing that the proportions, like this whole top has to measure this whole bottom. Okay. So now let's do something where it's the other way, right? Here's our head. Here's our shoulders. And we give ourselves that trapezoid shape. And then we just have the body at the bottom be stationary, so it's more straight down like our original, but our top can bend, right? Top can bend over, and just making sure that this half measures this half, so the legs will come down here and our knees will be more So this is something that you can just practice over and over again, of doing different shapes of torso and how that might reflect what the lower half does or what our legs do. And again, I'm just using basic shapes. If you wanted to go even more basic for fun, just so you can start working on the movement of the body, then I suggest you do it like this. So I'm going to flip this over. Maybe you weren't quite done. Don't worry. This could be something you could do too. Let me show you. Do a couple heads. And I'm going to give myself and then I'm just going to do a line. So we could make a bunch of stick figures to make sure that we are getting the proportions and the movement right. Nobody says that stick figures are bad. In fact, people say this all the time, I can't even draw a stick figure. Well, if you do this practice, you will get so good at stick figures that you could say, oh yeah, I can even do a stick figure really good. But it's all about the proportions, and it's about knowing that the body moves around and it does certain things, and you can still get the proportions right. So then you can add construction and volume after you get your lines and your basic shapes. This is no different than the very first lesson we did, which was a simple lamp. The lamp had basic shapes and it had lines and they connected and we measured that. So now we're just using it in the human form. So this is what I want you to do for the next 10 minutes. Well, I'll give you 5 minutes. How about that? You can do this where they're a little bit more chunky if you want, where it has a little bit more volume and it has a little bit more movement. Knowing that there's a calf muscle, remember it came halfway, and you have a foot. So you can use them a little bit more chunky and practice this, remembering that the torso from the chin to the belly button is twice as big as your hips and pelvic area. So don't be doing these exactly the same. So this area right here, this is half of that, right? So the half of that is like the chest area. Okay, knowing that, go back to this and check it out and make sure that as you move this form along and play around with it, that your proportions are right. Or if you aren't comfortable doing something like this,
Jamie.
yes, I just saw that, but I couldn't read it very well. What was it?
So the basic shapes are oval for head, trapezoid for chest and pelvis, rectangles for thighs, lines for arms.
Yes, yes. And that's exactly right. I'm glad that you mentioned that. So I'm using the same basic shapes on all of these that I'm practicing. I use circles for my joints, or my knees, my ankles, my shoulders. I use an oval for my head. I use trapezoids for my chest and my torso and my pelvic hip area. And then these could be called rectangles, right? That's a rectangle. So is this. Also, your arms could be rectangles, right? That's a little rectangle-y. That's a little rectangle-y. But then maybe a little triangle-y if you want. And all of these basic shapes are going to help you so that when you want to create this volume and these beautiful curves to the body, all you have to do is come in here and add the curve so that you don't have a triangle here anymore. You actually have nice curvy lines, okay? But get your shapes in there to begin with. Very good. And if you want to even go more basic than this, then I would suggest having fun with the stick figure. Still with an oval for the head, your trapezoid for the upper body, and an inverted trapezoid for the lower body. And then measure it. Make sure, is this the same size as this? And maybe I skimped a little bit and it's supposed to go down a little bit more, okay? That's what I want you to check on. So for the next 5 minutes, what I want you to do is I'm going to be doing it too, and you can follow along. I'm not going to talk. I'm just going to just start sketching the body moving using my lines and my basic shapes. I want you to notice that as I've been moving the body, I will follow kind of a symmetrical line that follows the body a little bit. And if you need to put that line in there to help you make sure that you are balanced, then by all means, go ahead and do it. Whenever I'm drawing one of these symmetrical lines, I'm reminded that if my body turns a little bit, then, okay, let's just do one right here, just a torso. Like if my body turns to the side, then that line has to turn to the side too. See that? And then you'll get more of a shoulder here and not so much here. So have that guide if you need to, so that you know how to split your body and as it moves around, that you can put it where it belongs. And that is a perspective trick, and it can be a little tricky. But as long as you know that if your body turns away from you, then this line is going to turn away from you as well. So it will not be in the half anymore. It'll be further away from you. Okay, and we'll do it again over here. If the body's turned this way away from you, so they're facing that direction, when I use that symmetrical line, that line is away from me. Does that make sense? And as you play with these movements of the body, you will find that if you can maintain your proportions and you can use these shapes to help you, you can move your body around, and then you can start adding things to it to add the volume and the movement. So this leg is going to be closer to me than this one, right? And it'll overlap, right? That's the body's turned away from here, right? The elbow's going to be here, and the arms are still going to come to here, to this area right here, but it's turned away from me. And I can give indication of that. And I hope that you can see that. Okay, so hopefully you've had some fun with some stick drawings. These are really fun to do because you can just, and you can do this. This is kind of fun too. You can get your kid or your husband or your mom and say, strike a pose, and then just say, hold it. And you can do a stick figure of the pose that they are doing to make sure that you are understanding where their waist is and what direction the torso is moving and where their legs might be. So that is a really fun, and you can totally do this as a family, is just have everybody just like one person strike a pose and everybody work on using the proportions correctly and your basic shapes and doing really fun stick figures of the family. Okay, So that is something that I want you to practice this week. Okay, let's move to this one here. And I'm going to show you how to take that stick figure and move it to the more volume construction so it looks more like a body, right? Because that's really the essence of what we're trying to do here, is not stick figures, but a true person that's moving. And with everything I do in art, I always do layers. I always make sure that I'm layering what I'm learning first. So the first layer would be, have I got the right tools? So my first layer is I've got a nice, good, crisp, clean piece of paper here, and I've got myself a really good pencil, and I'm ready to go. So that's my first layer. Second layer, I'm going to start sketching this in using my basic shapes and my lines. And then I'm going to do my proportions, and I'm going to make sure that my proportions are correct before I even put on any layer of clothing. Before I put on a scarf, before I put on a hat, before I put on some shoes. You would probably do really well to get your body down here first before you go and throw something like a skirt on her, right? And then you'll have to come back in and erase it all. So people are like, why would you even do that? Because you're just going to erase it anyway. Well, number one, I want to make sure my proportions are right. Number two, that's why I'm sketching lightly. You know, if I don't get my proportions right, then that skirt is definitely not going to look good. And I won't know how the legs come out. I won't know how they fit underneath that that dress, or those pair of pants, or those slacks, or that tuxedo, right? It could be anything that they're wearing, and I always still do this, okay? So how do I take that stick figure and make it look more like this? So let's take one. I'm going to do, let's see which one I want to do. Okay. So here's my head, and you guys can follow along, and you can do this too. Let's get our head in here, nice and small. And what are we going to do with that head? I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to give myself your pelvic area right here. Okay. Then I know that drawing lightly, I'm going to come in here. I'm going to get those basic shapes. 2 trapezoids. And then I'm going to do some stick figure arms. Remember, where do the wrists come, or where do the elbows come? From the belly button. So I get those, get maybe my shoulders in here, curve up a little bit. Okay. And we're just making kind of like that stick figure, right? My stick figure needs a symmetric line. And let's do some legs. What kind of legs should we put on this guy? Maybe we'll do something like that. And I'm actually going to take this arm, because it's very easy to always do your arms down, but sometimes arms aren't always down. So to help me measure this arm, I could take this and I could just be like, okay, I know that the wrist comes, or I know that the elbow comes to here. I know that's about the same. Is that the same? Is that the same? Is that the same? And that's going to help me. So now, and I've got to just make sure that this right here, now I've got this shape. We got the shape. It's going to go right to here. So this foot's going to be, this leg is going to be nice and straight. This leg is going to be off a little bit. So if it's off a little bit, is it going to be shorter or longer than the other one? It's going to be shorter because the knee is now bent. Okay? And you can, just like I did with the arm, you can measure this to that. And then you can know, well, where does my knee go, right? If it's the same length, hopefully people's legs are about the same length, right? Sometimes I hear they could be a little bit shorter or longer, and that's fine. But it's approximately the same, right here to here. So I know that my kneecap has to be here. And same with my lower leg. Did I get it right? Okay, I want it to come here. So it's going to come here. And then this arm is going to come to the middle of the thigh. So I can take and measure that. So now how do I take this, which I've just measured and I've given some proportion to, and I create a figure that actually looks like a figure? Okay, so this is where our basic shapes come in a little bit more, and then our rounded, volumizing lines come into play. So I know that this neck comes down here, and my shoulders come up here. I know that this leg is going to have this effect. And then remember, half of this is going to be its calf. So if I need to like bring it in a little bit, I can bring in that calf. I can make that knee. I've got to have my ankle. And I don't think I want this at such a sharp angle. I think I want it to be a little bit more down, but because it's, I think I want it a little bit more down like that, but he's off center a little bit. So you'll notice he's a little, that foot is a little bit shorter. I mean, it's the same because it's off. There we go. And this is where you can come in and start putting in your curves. And you, I promise, will get better at recognizing how to fill these lines in and get comfortable with how curvy they are when you do this several times, okay? So do not feel bad if this is the first time you've ever tried to draw a human figure and you're thinking, oh my gosh, stick figures, I hate this, I don't even know. This comes with practice. This comes with having fun with it and knowing your proportions, really. And I just can't even say that enough times. You just have to practice this. Are we on time? Okay. And we're going to talk about hands tomorrow or next week. And hands, people hate hands. I think people hate hands more than they hate the body. I really, and so do I. I mean, I used to be that my hand here, seriously, would have been behind her dress. I wouldn't have drawn her hand at all. I would have tucked it behind her back, or I would hide it behind a plant. I have come up with some very unique and ingenious ways to get rid of hands so that I didn't have to deal with them. And we're going to have some fun with hands next week. But if you still feel like, oh my gosh, hands, I just don't even know how to do it. Right here, as I'm doing the body, almost like I did with the face last week, is it's just a shape and more of a hint of what I'm trying to see what it says. When I draw, they look like cat paws. I love that. Okay, so, and here's the thing. When I'm doing a hand, it's more of like a triangle. It's kind of more of a triangle shape like that. Okay. And again, we're going to do these next week. So it's kind of more along the lines of a triangle shape for hands. And it really is just the essence. Make sure you're getting your wrist in there and your thumb, and then, and it angles. Okay. I think if you try to do the hands where they look like that, then you're right, it might look like a cat paw, which I think is beautiful. I love that you said that. But yeah, the hands right here for me when I'm doing them are just kind of triangle-y, and I'm just giving an essence of them. I'm not really doing like the full detail. Okay, I'm just let's see. So don't feel like you need to get perfect on that. So these ones right here on this figure, so here your wrist comes in, and then it kind of flares out a little bit, and a triangle, and you have a thumb. So again, they just don't have to be absolutely perfect. It's just, you're kind of giving yourself, just don't make the mistake of having everything look like a trunk. Like if you make everything look like this for an arm, and then you try to put something here at the bottom and with a thumb, it will just, you will feel like, okay, how does that work? Well, you forgot an elbow, you forgot your wrist, and each of these lines is not a line, it's a curved line. It's a curved line. It's a curved line. You see how I can move from a triangle, or not a triangle, but a rectangle, to something that more looks like a curved hand. And again, we'll go with that next week. But yes, that everyone always says, oh my gosh, I can get the legs, I can get the knees, but don't give me hands, because the hands just drive me bonkers. So anyway, that was just a quick little thing on hands. Now we're going to, for the last 10 minutes of class, this is what I wanted to share with you. I want you to, I'm giving you an assignment, basically, okay? And here's your assignment. Your assignment is, well, one, I want you to take all these fun little stick figures that you did, or if you do the stick figure of strike a pose with the family, then what I want you to do is take that stick figure and do kind of what I did here and give it structure and volume. Okay. And if you're so daring and you can do this, if you want to put clothes on him or her or whatever, let's give him some shorts, right? It's going to be a nice warm day today. Then by all means, take some of these poses that you did and give them some structure and volume. Okay. And once that is how you practice. Do a couple of your stick figures, then add the structure and the volume to them. Okay. And don't forget to use your template. That's going to help you and remind you. Use your fingers to help guide you. The proportions. You should have all that written down so that you won't ever forget. Okay. And then here is something else you can do. This could be fun as well. Now, what I did is I have some magazines around the house, and you may or may not have some magazines around the house. But if you do, and nobody cares if you cut them up or rip out a page, then what I would do is I would just go and find some figures in there, and I would draw on these figures. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw that torso, and it's very hard. I don't even know if you can see it. I'm going to come up really, really close so that you can see what I just did, right? I took that trapezoid that I just practiced over and over again, and I'm laying it down, and I'm looking at where she's moving, okay? And I'm looking for things that tell me that all of the measurements I made are really right. So you can take this face and you can do the angle of her neck, and you can do that and I want you to notice the curves. Now, is her elbow from her belly button? Oh, it is. It is, it is. And I want you to start noticing some of these curves and movements, right? And how, and I don't have much anything else underneath, right, of her, but I can start taking some of these pictures, and I can start looking at them and taking them apart in the form of my symmetrical lines and my trapezoids and my shoulders, and do my elbows fit where they're supposed to? Where's my wrist? Where does it hit? Okay, I have several of these. Here's a good one. This is from behind. Look at that. This is perfect because we see that the torso here, well, you know what? I'm just going to start measuring. Let's see if Miss Jamie here is a liar. Let's see if this works, right? And I'm just going to take this head, at the top of the head to the chin, right? And we're just going to say, okay, that is a size. And I'm going to measure that. I'm just going to get it so that I can get it almost where it's supposed to be. Okay. So somewhere right here is her head size, right? And we're going to go 1, 2, 3. Oh my goodness. Her head size 1, 2, 3 puts me right here. Right? Is that about right? That's about right. Okay. And then does this measure there? It does. Right? So I already know that's 4 heads high. That means that is 4 heads high as well.
Amy, it's 5 minutes till the end.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So start finding. Now, here is the brilliant thing in all of this, ladies and gentlemen out there. If you cannot find this, right, it is very hard sometimes to find the correct position that you want. Story, when I was in art class way back when, long time ago, I was in a class with all boys, and darn it all, they always made me the model. I had to sit on top of the desk and be the model, and so they could get things. But every now and then when I wasn't the model, it was super fun to have that person do a different pose and try to get these proportions correct and to fill them in different perspectives. And it was a lot of fun. And then I'd want to practice it, but I couldn't get my siblings to, you know, say, hey, can you sit there for an hour while I draw you? No, they did not want to do that because it was not a class and they were not required and they did not want to sit there. But we have the technology today. This is amazing that you can have somebody in your family take your phone and you could take a pose that you want to draw and practice, and they can take a picture of you, any movement, any shape, and they can take a picture of you, or you could take a picture of them. And then you can take that, and you don't have to wait around for another art class to say, well, I want to try a pose where, well, maybe here's the pose. I love this one. Right? That is a really fun pose. And if you can't find that in a magazine, but you wanted to try it, then you can strike that pose and have somebody take a picture of you. So I hope that you have learned a little bit more about the body today. Again, with all of these things, it's just very basic fundamentals. And when you start drawing things like this, right, which can be overwhelming. You look at that and you want to draw that or paint that, you could be very overwhelmed. And what I want you to start doing is, instead of being overwhelmed, I want you to say, wait, I can draw that because I know how to. I know the basics of how to draw this. And you start taking it apart. Well, let's just measure the head, right? And then we take that head and we go 1, 2, 3, and that's right there. And so I'm going to draw that proportion, and I'm going to draw this proportion, and then I'm going to take the legs, and I know the arms here. And then I've learned a lot about symmetry lines, and I can take and draw that line right there, so I know where her nose is and her mouth is, and I can the shape of her shoulders and the way they fit and the way her hips are going to fit, and even this line of the arm comes right to her here. And then I know that I got her as a basic shapes and basic lines, and I can start doing an observational drawing, so that when I draw this beautiful curved line right here, I can do that. So, and this will only happen if you start here and you practice and have fun with it. And then you take this to this or to this. And then you take that and you do these beautiful observational drawings of all these beautiful body types. And then you add your edges by shading. You add your lights and your darks for your shading. And then you can come away with this beautiful picture that you created, knowing full well that this isn't as intimidating as you think it is. So that is my challenge for you this week, is to have fun looking at the body in a different way. How does it move? Break it down into shapes, break it down into lines. Have somebody help you practice. Have somebody stand there and tell them you only have to stand there for 1 minute and time it, and see how quick you can sketch that out. I think that will help you sketch that out quick. Okay, let me show you one last picture here that I think might help you. This might be fun. You can draw on a piece of paper. You can get yourself a piece of paper and you can just draw a line. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 here. You could draw maybe 3 on the top, 3 on the bottom. And notice how I've given it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines, right? And this middle line is going to be your pelvis. This one's going to be the chin. So start with something like this. And then say, okay, 30 seconds, go mom. And she's going to do something crazy. And you have 30 seconds to use this and draw her shapes. Does that make sense? This might be fun to do with dad, and then you could draw all these sorts of poses with dad in them, and then you could give it to him for Father's Day. That would be super fun, of you drawing your dad in this really fun poses. So those are some things that you can do this week to practice this, and to go through magazines and look what you can find, or even just take a snapshot of yourself or somebody that's around you in different poses and practice on those as well. Does anybody have any questions before we end here? I think its time is up, but if anybody has any questions, I will field those. And then next week, we'll take again at the beginning of class, and you can show me anything that you worked on today that you are proud of or that you practiced this week. So does anybody have any questions? Okay. Again, you can always field questions in the survey, and then I can answer those if you need to. Next week, I can answer some of those questions. I'm really having a lot of fun with this, and I've already talked to Jeanette Edwards, and we will probably be doing another series after this one. And next week, just as a reminder, we're going to be doing the hands. And a heads up, hands, I'm actually going to draw on my hand. I'm going to draw some contour lines on my hand, and I want you to do that too next week. So you can do one of two things. You can wear gloves. Now, I know gloves are like a hot commodity right now. I actually just saw a box of 100 gloves over at BJ's today for $10. So if you're looking for gloves, the vinyl kind that are powdered or whatever, they have them there. But if you don't have that, if you don't have a glove laying around, then I'm going to be drawing on my hand, and that's going to help us with contour lines. So hopefully you don't have any objections to that. If you do, you can use my hand next week to help you. But if you can do your own, that's pretty cool too, because then it's your hand that you are drawing. Okay, I'm going to say adios. You guys were wonderful. Thank you so much. And I hope to see some pictures next week of some amazing body shapes.